Hi, this is Megan, and I'm going to show you in this video how to cut the paper to make the background for the Summer Nights layout number 2. I'm going to be honest with you right now, this is all in theory layout in my mind that we're putting together. I've practiced these cuts with another set of paper, so they work in principle, but actually putting them together and finishing out the layout, I may have to pause and kind of come back to it as I finish putting it together. So really this is focusing on the background, and then there'll be additional details on how to add the decorative details to it. So to get started, with the two papers, or really the one paper that we're using, but we're using both sheets, is this dark, kind of has a medium tone blue. The other side is a slightly lighter tone. We'll be using both sheets of these papers. And the reason I'm using these is because the pattern we're going to do is going to have kind of these almost like sun rays or sunset, things kind of coming up out of the center of the 2-page layout. So what I wanted to do is I wanted something that was a little bit more tonal so that they wouldn't be too distracting. These big bold rays, if they are high contrast from each other, it can be a little bit distracting. So I'm going to be sticking with something that's a little bit more subtle, which will be the tonal blue. So we have the medium blue, the opposite side is the dark, the lighter of the medium blues. We will also be using some navy cardstock. That's what I'm actually going to mount the paper on once I've got it going. So the first thing we need to do is both of our sheets of paper, we're going to trim down to 12 wide by 10 tall. That is the size of this cardstock template that I've already done. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to cut both of these sheets down. I want to, there will be a spot where they kind of come together in the middle. I don't necessarily think that there's too much of a difference. If I wanted to know where the middle would be, we'll say that this is my middle. So I'm going to cut off the bottom 2 sections here. So this 2-inch section I'm going to cut off. Go ahead and trim that with my trimmer. Save that piece. I don't have all the layouts finished yet, but we will never know where we're going to use the scraps. So we'll cut off this bottom edge. And we'll set those to the side. So now we have 2 they're 12 wide by 10 tall pieces of paper. So I'm going to go ahead and take these, and this first one, if you're doing this with another set of papers and you have, a right side up, or you want to see if your patterns match at all in the middle. And then mine don't really worry too much about it. There's no matching that they do because our ray is going to come right here in the middle. And so if there is any way that they do match up, I want to note where that is. And just make sure I reference that this is the top of this page and this is the top of this paper. So if you do happen to have a directional paper, if you're making this with other pieces of paper, you're going to want to note where the top of your paper is for both sheets of paper. So I'm going to say this is the top. If they get rotated, it's not too big of a deal. So the first one I'm going to do is I'm going to work with my right side piece of paper. I am going to go ahead and use a little bit of repositionable adhesive to adhere my paper down to my mat. And that's just because I'm going to be making several cuts with my rotary trimmer and I don't want to worry about my paper moving. So what I'm going to do is I am just going to put a little bit of adhesive in the corners. And the reason I'm doing it only in the corners, and I want you to only do it in the corners, because these pieces, so this section here, this corner and this corner, plus most of this, a majority of this corner, I won't be using the opposite side. The side that is up is the side that will be showing up on my layout. So it's no big deal if the adhesive does pull away a little bit of the design, the background, right? And sometimes that happens. It will sometimes lift the ink off of the papers. And I want to go ahead and line this up. I'm just going to use the 2 and 10 inch. That should give me, okay. Now let's go back to my template here that I've got. You can see here that I'm starting with 0 in my upper right-hand corner. And that actually matches the upper right-hand corner of my cutting mat. So when you're doing this, I want you to make sure that you have that big 2-inch block at the bottom missing. You've pushed everything up on your cutting mat. You want to make sure that you're up here in this corner at the 0 corner. And then we're going to do 4 measurements and use our pencil. We're going to come over and down 3 inches from the 0 point, and it's 3 inches right here and 3 inches. And then I'm going to come down 8 inches. And so that's 8 right here on my cutting mat and over 8 inches. All right, so everything is 0 up in the upper right-hand corner. That's the big thing to note here. Just make sure you're keeping that 0 for this piece of paper. When we do the next one, we're actually going to reverse everything. So for this one, this is the measurements to do the right page. All right, so when we're cutting our right page. So what you can do here is I have a rotary trimmer. I have my 18-inch ruler. I'm going to be able to come along in here and just kind of come through and cut my pieces. I'm going to start here with my 8-inch one, come up to my 3-inch mark, come around to my other 3-inch mark, and come over here to my 8-inch mark. I really didn't even need to necessarily mark them with the pencil if I didn't want to. Now, if you are not comfortable using the rotary trimmer, you could definitely cut these with scissors. You would just want to use a ruler, a straight edge, to go ahead and mark lightly with the pencil and then come in with your scissors and cut those. They are a little bit long to try to do with the Creative Memories 12-inch trimmer. You can probably do these shorter ones out to the 8-inch marks, but the 2 long ones that go up here to the 3-inch marks are a little bit too long. I think they're each pushing about 14 inches. And so, yeah, they're pushing 14 inches, which is just a little bit too long for that Creative Memories trimmer. So I'm going to use my rotary trimmer, and I'm going to take my time doing these. I'm sitting, which makes things a little bit interesting. And I'm going to just rotate things around, line it up as best I can. And I've got my rotary trimmer, and I'm going to come in here right on that edge and trim. There we go. I did a quick lift to see if I'm not too worried if I don't get it perfect, like if it doesn't cut perfectly. It should cut well enough that if I needed to, I can come in with a pair of scissors and finish the cut. I'm lining it up here with my 3-inch line coming down here to my corner. I want to give it a decent amount of pressure on my rotary trimmer. I want to make sure that it's going to cut through the paper. Come over here to this second 3-inch mark. My corner is not going to be perfect, and that's okay. I want to get it as close to perfect as I can, but it doesn't have to be absolutely perfect. I have one more cut to do. The 0 mark over to that 8-inch. And the biggest thing here, this is one of the reasons you're starting to see some of these pieces flap around a little bit, and that's why we wanted to make sure we had that adhesive, that repo adhesive on the paper. It's going to help things kind of stay in place. We will be mixing the pieces over a little bit. So there is a certain amount, and that wasn't the best cut ever. I think my cutter slid a little, my ruler slid a little bit. So now what I can do is just come in here, and I'm going to lift up these pieces, pull off any on the back side, rub off any of that adhesive that's stuck on there. And I'll want to just make a little pile with these. Like I said, I'm kind of winging this layout a little bit. I have an idea, a vision how it's going to go together, and hopefully it does. Just down here, that cut could be a little bit interesting to see. You might want to practice with some spare paper just to see, get an idea, especially if you're using your rotary trimmer and you're not super comfortable with it. You might want to just practice. And I want to keep the pieces kind of organized. So I'm going to set them up here a little bit organized. And then I'll just lay my pieces back on. Now, all right, so we're going to cut the second piece of paper correctly this time. I messed up the first time, so if there's a weird pause there, it's because I am inserting a new cut segment. So when we cut the left side page, we're going to cut it the opposite of the right. So whereas the 0 was up in our upper right hand corner, we're going to have the 0 be in our upper left hand corner. And we're going to go ahead and I need to put some adhesive on here. So just like we did with the other ones, I'm going to put it in the corners. And that will help keep my paper in place as I'm cutting. And line that up. And I want to come over 3 inches from the top and the bottom of the left-hand corner, so 3 inches. And then I'm going to come over here 8 inches over. So on this side, since this is technically it goes 9, 10, 11, 12. If I'm counting it as a 0 spot, I'm going to come over 3 inches. So 1, 2, 3, which is 9 on the ruler, top and bottom here in the corner. I'm going to come over 8 inches from the upper left side, and that's going to take me to the 4. And I'll come down here to the 4. So I just need to remember I'm cutting at 4 and 9. My mistake that I did before is I came down 4 inches and I cut at 8 and 4 instead of 9 and 4. So hopefully this time I can do it correctly. Grab my rotary trimmer, come over here, and I want to cut at the 4 inches. Where it says 4 inches. Remember, I am cutting the opposite. So it says 4 on my ruler, but I'm actually 8 inches over from the upper left-hand corner. So definitely think about that. Your cut guide will show you. I'll have it marked out there better so that you don't make the same mistakes that I'm making. So come there at 4 inches. Then I'm going to come over here to 9 inches. So I'm cutting that 3 inches from the left. That's where I messed up before. I cut it so that I was 4 inches from the left. It needs to be 3 inches from the left. I want to mimic my same raise on the other side. Coming here, coming down 3 inches from that upper corner. Can't see it on the screen anymore, but that's what I'm doing. I'm 3 inches from the top there, that top left corner. I probably need to get some of those arrow flags that would have everything that I could flag my cut. It's hard to see my pencil lines on this darker paper. Here we go. Okay, so now hopefully all these cuts are correct and I can show you how to put it together. So I have all my cut pieces here. I have all my cut pieces from the right side, and I need 2 pieces of navy cardstock, and you do have the navy cardstock in your, it's in your summer night paper pack. I'm grabbing a second sheet. So what I'm going to do is we'll put it over here. I'm going to pick up these right side pieces. We'll put 1 piece there. Just going to stack these on here for now. Lift all these up, and I'm going to put my second navy piece in here. Got to pull up that adhesive. All right, so there we go. We have the 2 navy backgrounds. So now what we're going to do is I'm going to leave some pieces in place. The center, what becomes the center of the layout, is going to stay this darker blue, the darker of the 2 blues. These 2 pieces, I'm going to swap. The larger chunky corner segments here are going to stay. These 2 pieces here are going to swap. And there you see that it starts to take that ray effect that comes out from the middle. And then we'll be able to come in. I've got the borders to go across the bottom. We're going to use the cloud borders. You could use any of the borders that you wanted to across the bottom there. I've got to find my other cloud border. He disappeared on me. And here's the second border that will come on there. So now I do want to do something kind of fun down here at the bottom. And certainly I could leave it as such. Up here, I'll be able to add photos however it makes sense. If I wanted to come down here at the bottom, I did choose to use, I have this paper set aside. I think that's what I'm going to use at the bottom to have just a little bit of flare of color. We're going to see what it looks like. I'm going to use my decorative trimmer. And I want to cut it so that the phases of the moon that they have here are going sideways. You can see them. We have two directions to this. We have one that has all the single phase this way, but this way the horizontal cut gives you every single one of those phases. So that's I want to cut this direction. So I'm going to flip it over and feed it in. Oops, I have some scrap of brown in there. And I'm going to give myself, like I said, I'm kind of winging this right now. I'm going to cut it at about 1.25 inches. So I'm going to go ahead. What I'll do is I'm going to go ahead and cut, establish that line, establish the wave. I'm going to use the wave edge. I'm going to establish the wave. And I'm going to come in here with my trimmer. And I'm going to cut that to, I'm going to cut it to a little bit more than 1.25 inches. These should be about 2 inches. I'm going to cut it at 1.5 inches so that the peak of my paper here is at 1.5 inches. I want to give myself a little bit of space if I want to add some additional pieces there. So I really like the colors all are coming together. I could have punched this. I thought about using the cloud punch at the bottom. I think that would have been really pretty too. The paper is really pretty here. So I'm going to go ahead and do that again. I cut one side, I'll cut the other. I'm going to go ahead, establish the cut, the wave. It's the first thing I do, and then I'll cut this from the peak of the wave to 1.5 inches. These will all be on your directions. I'll make the directions after I have this all put together, working a little bit more in reverse how I normally do. Normally I have everything well thought out and planned, but I wanted to be able to demo the cut with the actual paper so you could see how that would work. Now, I can come in here across the bottom if I want to with some kind of a punch to come in here. Now there are some borders within the collection itself. If you want to come in to use some of the stickers out of the sticker pack, you could definitely do so and put those across the bottom. I think I was debating using just a chain border, and you can come in with almost anything you want. I do have rolling sunshine. I think what I'm going to do is do a little bit of the rolling sunshine across the bottom. I'm going to punch it though, I think in canary, and have that little bit of yellow coming across the bottom. That's going to allow me to pull in some yellow if I want. This color is not in your sampler pack, but you could use any of the colors out of the sampler pack that you like that went with it. The Starry Night Shimmer would look really nice in here too if you wanted to come across here with something from that. But I'm going to try. I'm just going to give it a try. I have no idea what it's going to look like. I may decide I don't like it. So I'm just going to set one of those aside, grab my piece here, and go ahead and give it a shot with the rolling sunshine. The other one that might look good, I actually had it, was using before, was wispy chain. especially since I'm cutting cardstock. I was trying to cut some thinner paper with wispy chain, and you definitely want to use it more for cardstock. Or if you're using thinner paper with the wispy chain, you need to go ahead and maybe put a piece of cardstock under it. So there's that. That might be fun, kind of just something a little bit different. It could peek out of the clouds. The other thing I could do here is I could rotate the whole thing. This would become my left page or my right page. I could rotate my clouds around, and then my sunshines, my rolling sunshine, feel like they're a little bit more up top. That might be an option too. These almost look like fish in the water when I do that. So there are some ways to play around with it. I probably will have to do a little bit of experimentation here and see which way I like how this is all going to come together, especially when I start to look at my options for some stickers. That's the other thing too, is looking in here to see what do I have for stickers. I've got stars, I've got a moon that might look really fun, neat in there, depending on how I put things together. Some of that also comes down to the photos that you're using. You may use specific photos that really lend themselves to using one of your particular punches over another. So I'm going to play around with this a little bit more. You'll see the final result on the handout, or at the very end of this video, I'll post the final image. But really up in here with your designs, you'll be able to add photos and other details. You can come up, carry up the color to the top, or I do have a decent sized chunk of this paper to use for mats to carry that kind of coral color up into the layout itself. So I do like the canary with it. I think it's really pretty. I think it's going to come down to figuring out the best way to add all those together. So the tips for adhering that, I guess before I leave you with this, let's go ahead and put this together so that you can see, how it should all go together. I'm going to grab, let's see here. I'm going to grab my cutting mat and then I'm going to use some repositionable adhesive, especially in these narrow areas. I want to make sure I get a lot of adhesive down in those corners. Now, the navy cardstock has a tendency to be a little on the big side. It's about a 1/16 of an inch or so bigger. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to line it up so that it's flush across the top, and any extra is down off of this side and over here, and I can trim those all off later. So I'm really defaulting it to come everything flush on the left, or excuse me, the right and the top. You have to have a little bit of flexibility here with this because you cut these papers independent of each other. There is a chance that they will maybe not want to piece in correctly. So we're just going to do our best. Sorry, I ran out of repositionable tape there. And I really want to try to get these seams tight. If my edge here might be a little wacky, and that's okay. I'm just trying my best. The other option would be for me to go very deliberate with my seams and have them be not matching, or leave a space. And the other part I think I could do too is I could come in with some thin strips. So just go ahead, put things together tight as you can, and then if you need to, you can come back and make some adjustments to clean up any things that don't necessarily look right. It's the downside of cutting the papers independently of each other. Yep. But you can see it should go together pretty easily. The other thing I could have done is I could, if I really thought that it was not working out well, I could have left out the lighter rays here and just had navy in the background and saved these pieces for another project, maybe a similar layout. So that is an option too, if you need to, if things just didn't work out for your cuts, you can just leave that cardstock as your background. But it's pretty good. I mean, it's not maybe as perfect as I'd like it to be, but it's asking a lot to cut those two pieces completely independent of each other and having them match up just perfectly. So that would be how that goes together. Go ahead, grab this piece right here, and it's going to come in across the bottom. And I want to make sure that I put it on so that it's straight. If I have a little bit of gap here, it's okay because I'm going to use that border. So it's going to come in right around 2 inches. There. And I am flush here on the right side. You can see the gap here, or the edging on my left side, and that's where I'm going to have to go ahead and trim with my my 12-inch trimmer. And I'm going to wait before I put my border on, because I'm not sure. I might flip this around and have it go the other direction, and so that I would have clouds up top and some sunshine, little bits of sunshine. But I also might use the moon. I really like the sparkly moon that they have in the papers. So we will have to see. So thanks for watching. There'll be a video at the end you can see. All right, so I had a little technical difficulties at the end of the last segment of the video, so I wanted to go ahead and check back in, show you guys what it looks like all put together. I did get both sides done. I've got a little bit of spacing here down in this centerpiece, but that's okay. I did opt to go for more of the rays coming up out of the middle of it as compared to flipping it around and having it be more like the rays coming down. So the clouds are down here at the bottom with the uprights. I did use the rolling sunshine. I thought about using the star stickers that are in here. That would have been an option as well, but I still have another layout where I'm going to be using some of the star details, so I wanted to put those to the side and just wait. You might, you know, depending on the theme of your layout, have some other options in there. I could have put the stars instead of the clouds. So the clouds you don't necessarily have to use here, but I want to show you how we can use the contents of the secret box. Now, in terms of this section here, you have basically a blank slate to add your photos. You do have enough of the sparkler, I guess, paper to be able to make some mats from that if you want to. It's kind of a distinct color, so I went ahead and used it. I know they gave us tangerine in the cardstock sampler. It's not my favorite color. It's pretty bright, so I am going to be sticking to using this kind of the tonal paper, the opposite side of that, little bit more of the orange. I could have used some orange shimmer cardstock here maybe too. Really depends on your photos. But I did want to still use some more of the canary color. I love, there is that really soft yellow in the this pinkish coral paper. So I wanted to use that. What I ended up doing is I cut some 6x8 mats. And these are just kind of here kind of in the middle, just to anchor things a little bit. I don't know how the photos are going to go on here, but this is kind of just maybe a little bit of a general idea of what you could do. You can customize this as you need to. It'll be in the handout, so you'll have the measurements here. And I'm just imagining putting these photos as such. I've got some room if I want to put a little title, if I want to do some journaling, a sticker cluster there. I do have that. Coming in here, staying with some vertical images. My mats are 4¼ inches wide by 6 tall. So I could use some 4 by 5¾ inch photos on these mats. All 4 of the mats are the same size. So here you can see we kind of have this, nice presentation going on here. Don't have a ton of photos on here. That's probably the one thing that maybe bothers me a little bit about this particular layout is I'm not putting a ton of photos on here, but that's okay. Not every layout has to have a ton of photos put in there. I could maybe try to Peekaboo Pocket if I needed to, or add some additional, maybe collage some of the photos. But now I do have some space at the top. And of course, you may not. You may put more photos on here. But I thought it would be a nice option if you wanted to come across with those shooting star laser cut borders. So they would come across the top. And here we really have this kind of like ta-da presentation. So it does have, the summer nights is the theme of our papers and stuff, but really it could go into really almost any type of theme that you wanted to, in terms of like, you're a shooting star, maybe celebrating accomplishments of somebody. So that would be a great way to accent it, especially if you wanted to come down here, maybe not use the clouds, maybe use the stars or another type border. You've got the pretty shimmer papers to work with in the sampler pack. If you wanted to add in a different punched border along the bottom instead of those clouds, that would be definitely an option. So this is going to be kind of what I give you as the final layout to show some options there. Just keeping it, pretty simple with the ways to put it together. Consider it a blank slate if you need to. This layout definitely could be done with other collections. So if you like the overall look, but you want to save your summer nights papers for something different, you can certainly do so. The biggest thing here is going to be sticking, if you can, a little bit more tonal of the rays. The higher the contrast, the more, I don't want to say distracting, but the more they're going to compete for attention compared to your photos. So sticking here, I went with the more the medium and the light blue, and that allowed it to kind of work without being too overwhelming. So anyway, hope you guys have a chance to give it a try and are enjoying making your summer nights layouts. Thanks for watching.